Hello, everyone. My name is Araya Blakely, and I'm the lead organizer for WomenNOW Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm currently on campus in Iowa City, and my internet goes in and out from being on campus. So sorry you can't see me, but I'm so happy to see you all. Before we get started, I wanted to inform you all about the best ways to participate in today's convening. Let's start with the essentials. Since we're in a Zoom webinar format, we encourage our viewers within the NGOCSW platform and on the outside looking in, hello Facebook Live, to leave comments whenever you find something relatable, intriguing, or inspiring. Make sure your Wi-Fi is stable, unlike mine, and have a charger for your device nearby. These are the two most important things that you can do to ensure that you will not miss a beat. After our two panels, the WomenNOW team will be hosting a solidarity session that you can register for at womennow.world. The solidarity session is an integral part of shaping our in-person global summit at the end of the year. Plus, we would love to see all of your beautiful faces and be in community with you all. Lastly, closed captioning is available in English for our convening today. To enable this feature, click the CC button on the controls bar at the bottom of your screen. The Continuum's co-coordinator, Robin Lucas, is now going to dive into today's agenda and what to expect.
Hi, friends. My name is Robin Lucas, and I'm the co-organizer of WomenNOW Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum. To start this convening, we will watch a short video from In Our Own Voice. Ooh, whoopsie. To start this convening, we will start with a short video from In Our Own Voice that gives a brief overview of what you all need to know about reproductive justice. After that, we'll watch a keynote address made by Dr. Natalia Kinem of the United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA for short. Following the keynote address, a chosen youth SRJ organizer will respond to Dr. Kinem's remarks and her words of wisdom. Our moderator, Jalicia Jolly, will then introduce the themes and the focus for panel 1. We will be holding 2 panels in total today, with a featured artist in between. Each panel will have 2 parts. The panelists will be given time to speak on their individual experiences, but after, they will be in conversation with one another, discussing a prominent issue within the region. The moderators for today's conversation are Jalicia Jolly and I will say Valerie Joseph. We will get to know them later, but please give a warm welcome to those amazing advocates. After panel 2 concludes, we will move forward into today's closing remarks, and then for the aforementioned solidarity session, we will post that in the chat and we hope to see you there. And I made a mistake a little bit ago, but our second moderator is Timnit Gadar. Yes. Thank you so much. So moving forward, we want to start with the information to aid in making these upcoming conversations accessible to those who are not directly involved in sexual and reproductive health rights and justice. We're now going to watch a 2-minute video from In Our Own Voice called The History of Reproductive Justice.
Reproductive justice. A lot of people talk about it, but many don't know what it really means. Here's the basic idea. Coined by 12 Black women in June of 1994, the term is the combination of 2 phrases, reproductive rights and social justice. The new phrase reflected the lives and experiences of Black women in the United States who had been denied a full range of services and protections. Black women have multiple identities, like age, ability, sexual orientation, immigration status, religion, and nationality, just to name a few. Consider the fact that Black women experience some of the highest rates of poverty and only make 63 cents for every dollar a white man makes. Nearly 20% of Black women have no health insurance, and die 4 times as often as white women from pregnancy-related causes, regardless of income or educational status. The issue at play here is intersectionality, a term coined by legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, which refers to how multiple systems of oppression work together. Reproductive justice is how we take on all the systems that harm us. Reproductive justice is the human right that can only be achieved when all women and girls have the complete economic, social, and political power and resources to make healthy decisions about our bodies, our families, and our communities in all areas of our lives. Reproductive justice centers the leadership and lived experiences of the most vulnerable, including but not limited to Black women, women of color, LGBTQ people, and youth. So there you have it. Reproductive justice has given thousands of women a framework to change policy, improve services, collaborate with other social justice movements towards our collective liberation. For more information, contact In Our Own Voice at www.blackrj.org. Thanks for watching, and welcome to the movement.
The history of reproductive justice runs deeper than what can be said in a mere 2-minute video. We encourage you all to learn more about the decades of organizing that we are only continuing. Dazon is now going to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Natalia Kanem. Dazon?
Okay, so I'm just finished doing my selfie mic check, and I sound good. So I hope you all can hear me better now. Sorry about that. So Dr. Natalia Kanem is not only one of my dearest and closest friends and a beloved leader in our movement, but she holds more than 3 decades of experience in strategic leadership and management in the fields of medicine, public health, international peace and development, human rights, and social justice at organizations such as the Lloyd Best Institute of the West Indies, the Elma Philanthropy Services, and the Ford Foundation. Dr. Kanem is among the highest ranking women at the United Nations, and she's the first Latin American to head the UNFPA. Please give a warm WomenNOW welcome to my friend, my dear, the Honorable Dr. Natalia Kanem.
Distinguished participants, sister love sisters, as we kick off the WomenNOW Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum, we come together to share experiences as Black women, as feminists, and always as people of courage, survivors who figured out that taking action to make things better makes our progress greater than our struggles. We stand shoulder to shoulder because that's what Nzinga, Nana Asantaya, Nanny of the Maroons, Ida B. Wells, Funmilayo Ransom Kuti, Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, Graça Michelle, and so many others have taught us. Together, we are strong. And that's how we will make good on plans we made a quarter of a century ago for reproductive health and rights and justice. Just before the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, the reproductive justice movement took root, and it was Black women like Loretta Ross weaving and binding together reproductive health, social justice, and human rights, who articulated for the world the link between bodily autonomy and the multiple intersecting forms of discrimination and oppression faced by women of African descent. As Frederick Douglass famously noted, power concedes nothing without a demand. So, my sisters, we of this generation of women now raise our voices to challenge discriminatory laws, to demand changes in gender-based policies, and the antiquated norms that threaten women's bodily autonomy and limit full sexual and reproductive health and rights. using the global human rights agenda. It was Black women who revolutionized reproductive politics and activism around the world. And in 2021 today, in the midst of a pandemic in which Black communities are hardest hit, in which pervasive racism and inequality chew away at the common societal fabric, we insist that Black lives matter. The intersection of gender and race, and too often poverty, compounds challenges for Black women who experience disproportionately high rates of lack, who are disproportionately overrepresented in the informal job market and the unemployment line, and all too often have little access to basic health and social protections. And indeed, racism and structural barriers conspire to leave and push women further behind. It's evidence and data that makes this type of inequality obvious. It's data that tell us that African American women are up to 3 times more likely than white women to die of pregnancy-related causes. True also of Afro-descendant women in countries such as Brazil, Ecuador, and Colombia, where there are also high rates of teenage pregnancy. And this constitutes a crisis within a crisis that cries out for action. Here at UNFPA, we aim to do something about that through access to high-quality sexual and reproductive health care, information, and support. My very dear sisters, Black women have a history of being trustworthy and highly capable, of organizing, mobilizing, and building powerful movements. Globally, our advocacy efforts contributed to milestones such as the ICPD Program of Action and the Beijing Platform. And recent events up to this minute show us that Black women are true agents of transformation. We make the seemingly impossible normal, natural, and possible to the benefit of our extended family, which is our community. Solidarity, unity, and allyship are critical to our success. It's the spirit of Ubuntu that's critical to our success. I am because you are. At UNFPA, our approach is intersectional and comprehensive. We've taken a page from the Reproductive Justice Playbook and continue to bring cross-movement alliances in over 150 locations around the world. UNFPA is working with government and with local women to build political will, to expand participation, to open spaces for new leadership, promoting policy dialogue and putting policy into practice by challenging harmful norms. And we're amplifying the voices of young people and empowering rights holders to know their rights and to dare to believe that they must absolutely claim those rights. We're training midwives and health experts and strengthening statistical systems to generate disaggregated data, to make vulnerabilities visible by gender, by age, by ethnicity, by disability, and location. So now, what would I have you do? WomenNOW, I ask you to use your collective experience and your wisdom to build a better, healthier future where every woman can exercise control over her own body. Because real sisterhood is not about blood, it's about sharing knowledge, ideas, perspectives, and proudly sharing our stories without any hint of stigma or shame, in the pioneering spirit of women leaders like Chief Beasy, Billy Avery, and Dazon Dixon. Many of you know me as a resolute advocate for women and against rape and gender-based violence, including against child marriage and female genital mutilation. Now COVID, with its lockdowns and movement restrictions, is making women's lives so much more difficult. And one of my favorite stories that keeps me optimistic through it all is this one. Harriet Tubman, upon rescuing herself, because that's what we do, rescue ourselves, out of enslavement, said, When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven. Please let us keep telling our stories, passing them on from generation to generation, each time learning how to be the architects of our own destinies. Until the sun shines like gold through the trees, keep on taking big strides forward into an inclusive, just, equal, and healthy future, not just for some of us, but for all of us. Thank you.
I am now going to welcome our youth respondent, Chanel Brown, to respond to Dr. Kanem's keynote remarks.
First of all, let me just say thank you for having me responding to such an uplifting and beautiful speech. To the organizers of today, Dr. Kanem, our participants and panelists and our viewers, good afternoon. Dr. Kanem started off by reminding us that by taking action, by doing something to make situations better, our progress becomes greater than our struggles. As women in this time and age, in this era, we have the ability to make our voices heard when it regards change in gender-based policies, change for the rights of our fellow Black women, change for the eradication of the outdated norms and practices that threatens a woman's independence. We see that our gender plus our race act as barriers to keep us behind. But Dr. Kanem reminded us today that together we are stronger. We can pull together our ideas, our experiences, our wisdom, our knowledge to help fight for the rights of Black women in the Caribbean and by extension, the world. For me, today is all about sharing our experiences, our thoughts, our ideas, coming together as sisters to share and to continue to fight for our fellow Black women. As I close, we are reminded of our motto, a couple of words that have just recently became our motto, Black Lives Matter. And yes, Black lives do matter, but Black women matter. The rights of Black women matter, and we must continue to make this known. Black women are great. I believe that we are simply the best, and whatever we are a part of is great and has that Black girl magic that we like to boast about. We must continue to come together on platforms such as this. And again, I thank you so much for this platform that we have today, and continue to fight for the change that we desire and the change that we deserve. We must continue to build sisterly bonds with each other and fight together. Again, thank you, Dr. Kanem, for reminding us that real sisterhood is not about blood, it is about sharing. Thank you.
I'm now going to invite our first moderator, Jalicia Jolly, to the floor.
Yes, thank you for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you for that just wonderful opening and of the video, and also Chanel, of your wonderful words in response to Dr. Kanem's keynote remarks. Hi, everyone. My name is Jalicia Jolly, and I will serve as a moderator for panel 1. I am a reproductive justice activist and educator, a scholar of Black women's health and activism, and a professor of Black studies and American studies. So I ask that the panelists introduce themselves, including their names and pronouns, current occupation or organization they're representing, and where in the Caribbean you are from. The order is on the slide and in the chat.
Yolanda, if you would go first in introducing yourself, saying your name, pronouns, title,
Let's change up the
etc.
slide. Okay, so good afternoon to all you wonderful women all over the world. My name is Yolanda Simon, and I am from the lovely twin island of Trinidad and Tobago, and I am representing the Positive Woman Network of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yay, we can see you, Yolanda. Yay.
Hi, I am Lorangelis Thomas Negron. I'm from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I'm part of Pangea. El Junte Positivo es un espacio para jóvenes que vivimos con VIH, y Madrilineo, which is another project where I do reproductive justice. I will speak in Spanish and English. Thank you.
Welcome, Laura Angeles.
Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Shania Brown, and I am from the beautiful island of Jamaica. I am representing E4Life Jamaica and the E4Life and with and for Girls initiative.
Greetings and welcome to the space, Chanel.
Wait Benafe, Mabuga, Ifashina Efuniemi here. I go by she or her. I currently teach full-time Belizean History, Caribbean Studies, Research and Business Communication at Stann Creek Ecumenical Junior College. And I'm here representing the Productive Organization for Women in Action, POWA, a women's organization that was established in 2003 to address the feminization of HIV/AIDS, sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender-based violence and human rights, among other issues affecting our community. We are based in beautiful Dangriga, Belize.
Welcome, Ifasina.
Hi, everyone. Greetings. My name is Stephanie Leach, and I also come from the twin island of Trinidad and Tobago as my sister Yolanda. I'm here representing my organization, WomenNOW, which is a queer woman-led feminist organization.
Thank you and welcome to the space, Stephanie. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. The name of this first panel is Gender and Reproductive Justice, and we'll start with round one. So Black women have always combated gender inequality, sexism, and patriarchy from an intersectional standpoint. And in the Caribbean, Black girls and women have been at the forefront of advancing the well-being and health of girls and women and non-gender binary folks through a reproductive health, rights, and justice lens. And I really wanted to take a moment to really speak about why and how we always resist. And to start, we are asking you all to speak to gender-based violence, gender identities, policies needing addressed, needs that need to be addressed, and young people's sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice. And the guiding questions will be on the screen briefly. Excellent. And so we can start with Laura Angeles. I'll start with you when you ask, I'll start with you when I ask the following questions. What are the challenges and solutions for Black women in the Caribbean that you represent and advocate for related to these topics? What's unique to the intersections that you address? And what's the common ground for the regional challenges? So I'm not sure, I don't think we're discussing that first one first. Yes. So we'll start with this first, right? So what are the challenges and solutions for Black women that you represent, advocate for? What's unique to the intersections that you address? And what are some of the common grounds for the regional challenges? So Laura Angelis, we'll start with you.
Hi. Bueno, sobre la salud y derechos sexuales de jóvenes. En Puerto Rico, ahora mismo estamos teniendo una lucha para que haya un currículo con perspectiva de género en las escuelas, tanto a nivel elemental como a nivel intermedio y a nivel superior. En adición a eso, ahora mismo está en la Cámara y en el Senado un proyecto de ley que busca prohibir las terapias de conversión, que es algo que está, ¿verdad? Que se había estado dando en Puerto Rico de manera muy sutil, no de manera tan formal. Así que ahora estamos pasando unas leyes, ¿verdad? Y estamos impulsando para que esto no siga sucediendo. También por varios años se estuvo exigiendo un estado de emergencia, ¿verdad? Que el gobernador, la gobernadora en aquel entonces, estableciera un estado de emergencia para asignar financiamiento y fondos y recursos a la erradicación y a la lucha, ¿verdad? En contra de la violencia de género. Puerto Rico, a pesar de que, ¿verdad? Somos una población relativamente pequeña, la realidad es que los feminicidios han estado en aumento, particularmente desde el huracán María, ¿verdad? Una de las cosas que experimentamos en el Caribe son los huracanes, ¿no? Y entonces como cada época y temporada de huracanes son un reto, no tan solo para la recuperación justa en las comunidades rurales, sino también porque muchas veces estos eventos son los que destapan toda la desigualdad y toda la violencia que vivimos las mujeres negras, las personas queer y las personas jóvenes. ¿Verdad? Así que algo bien particular también del Caribe es cómo la violencia de género también se vincula a otro tema que no hablamos mucho, como es el cambio climático y cómo eso representa mayores retos y más violencia para todos y todas y todos aquí ahora mismo. Gracias.
Jalicia, you're muted.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Laura Angelis. So we shift to Yolanda, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thanks again for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I want to just jump right into it. We're talking about gender and reproductive justice. For a long, long time, I have been a feminist activist, but my real passion has been in HIV and AIDS. As an HIV positive woman for over 30 years, I've seen a lot. So could you imagine at the beginning when it was we're talking about all of us as women wanting to have children all those years ago, and because of our HIV status, we were told no. And for those of us who became pregnant, we were told, well, you had to have an abortion. And a lot of women had their babies aborted without their consent. So I'm fast forwarding now, it's 2021. You think things are much different? Hell no, not much different at all. Because now, of course, with the technology and the science, we've had mother-to-child transmission initiative. So women are having children, and guess what? The children are being born negative. But what's happening is that a lot of women are being told they should not have children anymore. Is my time up? Good, right. So what I wanted to drop in before we get to the chat is about 4 things that I wanted to mention real quick. One is the economic situation in the Caribbean, the access to treatment, the cultural norms, and what we call risky behavior. Now, all of that is a lot in the pot that we call Callaloo in the Caribbean. And I hope when we get to the next part, we can discuss some of those issues, because those are real issues that are really impeding women and really holding back women for what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for that. And we're looking forward to delving into more of that further in our next round. Chanel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Zooming in on gender-based violence. So in Jamaica, more than 1 in every 4 women has experienced some amount of intimate partner, physical and sexual violence in their lifetime. In the first national survey on gender-based violence in Jamaica, it showed that 27.8% of women are affected. And additionally, 1 in every 4 women has experienced physical violence alone at the hands of their male partner. We're seeing that 1 in every 5 adolescents and youth experiences physical or sexual violence from their male partner. Now, these statistics and numbers are from 2018, and presently we're in a pandemic. So we're seeing now that the numbers are increasing, the numbers are getting higher. We are stuck at home, we have nowhere to go. We're at home with these abusers who are again frustrated, they are losing their jobs, and we have nowhere else to go. So the numbers are going up. We are seeing where especially in Jamaica, I can say, we have been asking for women's shelters for these women who are being abused, somewhere for them to go to. Not everyone has family members where they can, turn up and, say, hi, can I stay, or, something of that sort. We have been asking from the 1980s, I believe, for these women's shelters to come to fruition, and up to now they have not been established. So that is one solution for those women who are abused. When we look at the policies that we need to address, abortion is in the headlines every single day in Jamaica, and I believe that the policymakers are not really zooming in on the persons who are being affected. Women are being raped, and a lot of the times they carry these babies, try to love these babies, but the child ends up in difficult situations. And as such, we're asking that they legalize safe abortions, and as such, afterwards, they can regulate these services. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we shift to Ifasina. The floor is yours.
Mabuga, and greetings again. 3 minutes to talk about all that we go through. It's such a challenge, but I will try my best to really pack it in. The women and girls that Power primarily represents are marginalized women of Southern Belize. However, we are expanding our services to other parts of the country. Our focus is empowering women and girls, not only with relevant information they need on a variety of issues that impact them, but also ensuring their access to especially SRH services. Psychosocial support, now especially looking at COVID-19 and all its impacts, capacity building, legal support, and economic empowerment. We recognize that it is not enough for women and girls to be equipped with relevant, accurate, and timely information about the issues that impact them, but they most definitely need to also be able to access the much needed services and have the support so that they can indeed enjoy all their rights and gender justice. We're located in the South, and most of our members are Garinagu, an Afro-descendant and indigenous group that was displaced through forced removal from our homeland, Urume, now known as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This displacement happened in 1797, and our ancestors were exiled and placed on Roatan Island, Honduras. Since then, we have established communities along the coast of Central America, including Belize, and we have been struggling for acceptance, for equal opportunities, to be educated, to access resources, to achieve gainful employment or start our own businesses, to live safe and free from violence, to have access to contraception, safe abortion, comprehensive sexuality education, and the list goes on. Gender-based violence, as it impacts just about every woman in the world, it impacts us too. And being in the South does not make this issue easier for us to address. Younger and younger females are being impacted by this issue. So there is a vicious cycle of violence. And we have the added burden of dealing with exposure to HIV and AIDS and other STIs, and still being also the main breadwinners, the main persons that are leading our households and having to take care of our families. And then it makes it also difficult for us to protect our girls. So power is targeting not just women, but also girls. And it continues to be challenging because we are in a system, a structure that pushes women and girls to be in these subjugated positions and to not have the equal opportunity. So of course, if you get pregnant and you they don't question about how it is that you got pregnant, there isn't enough being done in relation to the exploitation of girls, but then you get kicked out of school, and opportunities to go back to school, worse in the face of COVID-19, are even more difficult because you're looking also at the technological challenges that women and girls face in order to be able to go to school. So these are just, in a nutshell, some of the things that our women are dealing with, having as single mothers, many of them, to lead households, not necessarily having employment right now, not necessarily having the support that they need, and still having to keep their head up and keep their families going. It continues to be a major challenge.
Thank you so much for highlighting the dimensions of those issues, Ifasina. We shift to Stephanie. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jalicia. I think answering this question, it kind of speaks to the second question, which I know our viewers aren't privy to yet, but it's around intersectionality. Because when we're talking about how systems affect Black women, the conversation is different in the Caribbean region versus the US, for example, because our populations aren't Black and white, you know, figuratively and literally. And Trinidad and Tobago, and definitely many other Caribbean countries, have a dominant Black population. And so it's really about the intersections of Blackness coming into play. So of course, economics is an issue. So we know that poor Black women would be treated differently because many poor Black women have to use public health facilities. The treatment that they would receive would of course be different than if they were able to access private health facilities, where the medical staff, they have different access to different types of training, or just there's perhaps a different type of standard of care. And then, you know, we know that queer Black women, for example, will be treated differently in a health facility versus a cisgendered heterosexual woman. And so, you know, I think that Black women have to show up with this type of curated Blackness in order to get the types of services that other people might be afforded. And also, you know, speaking to my own local context here in Trinidad, there's also a large Indo population. And, you know, thinking about how Indian families are extended families. And so that, you know, an Indian woman, for example, might have the support of living with her mother as well as her grandmother and other cousins in the home space to help her care for her children, for example. Whereas we know that through history, slavery, the systematic breaking up of families has caused the Black family to look different, who are more isolated, you know, and we have a lot of single parent Black mothers who don't have the same type of support systems and the same type of networks that Indo families might have. And not just Indo families, but other types of families, people who have access to networks, like who can afford to pay for childcare and other types of services that would make the burden less, or a burden that Black women don't have the, you know, they're not able to afford or enjoy in the same ways. Yeah, and when, again, you know, talking about the intersections of sexuality and thinking about how that plays out in numerous ways. So, for example, I mean, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but just based on my own knowledge and observations, from what I see, most sex workers, for example, are Black women. and not only cisgendered Black women, but also trans Black women. And how do those intersections, again, make them even more vulnerable to police violence, to being barred from accessing healthcare, or even if they do access healthcare, how is that
Thank you.
experience, and how much of their identities do they need to suppress in order
Thank you, Stephanie. We would love to dive into these more. We want to be mindful of the time and give space for everyone to engage with so much of what you brought up in our next round. So in different ways, all of you have addressed the contemporary context that makes these current issues of poverty, of violence, of inequality, HIV, uneven access to services, treatment, and medical care, really, just as an example, an ongoing and urgent reality. And the issue of power, of sexuality, et cetera, are really ongoing threads in different ways. And I want to give space to dive into the different dimensions of this in round two. So now that we have a little bit of context about the common challenges faced by Black girls, women, non-gender binary folks in the Caribbean, I want us to situate ourselves in this current moment. Black Caribbean women are organizing and elevating their voices in public and institutional spaces in the face of the growing power of religious forces. Girls and women often have to navigate this complex landscape as they embrace their own religious and faith practices. And as religious actors have continued to challenge women's reproductive health rights and autonomy, they continue to show more than ever that we are in need of stronger and sustainable protections for Black girls and women in relation to sexual and reproductive equity. So moving forward with our first panel, we are now asking you all to speak in conversation with one another regarding how religion plays a role in gender and reproductive equity and justice. So my question for all of you is, does religion enable violence, sexual reproductive sexual reproductive health and justice against women and girls? Does religion enable this against women and girls? And I understand it might be a provocative question, and we are excited to dive into the juicy depths of all of this. So anyone who would like to go first can dive on in.
Well, I will start by saying that definitely religion does this. Religion definitely represents patriarchy at its highest. And we are here in Belize subjected to an education system that is dominated by religion, by the church, by organized religion at that. And they have been very discriminatory when it comes to anything that is native or non-Christian. And more we've seen the evangelicals also gaining a lot of traction in their campaign against anything that is progressive or liberal, which is basically anything that is human rights, because it seems they are the only ones that are entitled to rights. So when it comes to ensuring that women and girls especially have access to comprehensive sexual education, if once they can put a stop to that, that's what they've been guilty of doing. You don't hear them in any public campaign against GBV or overall violence in the society. But when it comes to the gender policy, big marches against the gender policy. If we're going to talk about safe abortion, big marches when it comes to safe abortion. Anything that has to do with protecting our rights and our bodies and our right to choice, they have nothing to, they will oppose anything that will protect or celebrate our rights, but they will never stand up in our defense against GBV. They are doing nothing when it comes to addressing the issues that are seriously impacting us. So they are guilty of these very issues that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I just want to follow on from what Aoife is saying, because I think it is generally similar across the board throughout the Caribbean region. And not only do they not support movements against gender-based violence, but they actually support gender-based violence in some instances. So when Trinidad and Tobago was making a move to end child marriage, for example, that was the first and only time that I saw all religious leaders in the country unite to oppose the movement to end child marriage. Well, I should say the first time other than their unification around anti-LGBT rights. And so it's deeply concerning. And we also see, like Ifashina said, that religious bodies are typically headed by men. Like even our National Sexual and Reproductive Health Policy, which was approved in August of last year, if you look on the signatories page of all the people that had to sign that document, they were all men, which is like gaggerific, you know. And it's interesting because you know, even in our policy, we see that there's, you know, key populations listed, which is of deep concern around SRH issues, and LGBTs, for example, are not mentioned, but they were mentioned in a previous draft that wasn't approved. And we know that, for example, the Catholic Church was consulted around the contents of the National Sexual and Reproductive Health Policy. And while I don't think that FBOs or religious bodies should be completely excluded from national policy, we see how religious beliefs are encroaching on national laws that continue to be discriminatory against populations that really need support and protection.
Mm-hmm. And it's not right, it's not fair. I don't see why they're given all this power. Honestly, it's totally unacceptable.
I agree with the two ladies that went before me, Stephanie and Ifashina. I do agree that religion does enable violence against women. We're seeing where, from the Bible days, we're seeing where women or the wives are the property of the man, their husband, and with things like that, the woman is subservient. They are submissive. They're to be submissive to their husbands or to their male partner, and things like that enable or create the perfect environment for marital rape. A man can rape a woman and it will be deemed as rape, but if a husband forces himself onto his wife, it is not deemed as rape because they're married and the woman is to submit to him. I was reminded of a story, or cases where the father may rape his daughter. The father is a deacon in the church or a pastor in the church or has some high ranks in the church. And when it comes to the attention of your security forces, your police officers, you hear the church say, "Oh no, it wasn't rape. It was just a misstep. It's a weakness in flesh, or he just needs to repent. He just needs to pray, and then he won't do it again." So things like that really give or open the environment or enable these people to enable violence against women. I went to a Catholic school, and I can truly say that we did not get the proper education, or we weren't supposed to get the proper education when it regards sex and contraception and policies around that and stuff like that. So I can agree that religion does enable violence against women and girls.
If I may jump in here for a little bit, I just want to hit on a couple of markers. First, I want to talk about the power dynamics. I also want to talk about male privilege, and I want to talk about the policing of our bodies as women. And those three things together still continues ad nauseum in the Caribbean, because I traverse the Caribbean. And as Stephanie said, it's interesting but appalling that for all of these policies to move forward, anything that suggests that women can take 2 steps forward in the interest of everybody, it's shut down. But I really want to zero in on the power dynamics, because we in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, I think it's more than 15 years now, Stephanie, we've been trying to pass our national gender policy. Other gender policies have started and have been passed and are in the works in other Caribbean territories. But for some odd reason here in Trinidad, 19 years, Stephanie reminded me, For some odd reason here in Trinidad and Tobago, it cannot happen. There are so many barriers to that. And certainly if at a meeting like this, I would say, if this is convened in Trinidad and Tobago right now, I don't even know if we'd get permission to have such a meeting, because it goes against all of the religious doctrines and the whole point about we women need to be seen and not heard. And sometimes I think we're still back in 1955 when we're all supposed to be in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant.
They even marry the girls. They are the ones that officiate the marriage of girls. We have so much issues with girls being married off. We have an age of consent that's 16, that's below 18, and so you can't even access health care, but you can get married or get into a relationship sexually, but you can't access health care because you're not 18. These are some of the conflicts legally. And then we have an equal opportunities bill that hasn't been passed, again, because the churches stood up against that. So it is a constant battle, and these people claim that they stand for human beings and care and love and all of that, but it's very, very subjective and very, very patriarchal, definitely against women and girls. It's not to the advantage of women and girls at all.
I also want to make an intervention here for viewers who aren't familiar with Trinidad and Tobago. We are a highly multicultural society with people of many religions, so Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, etc., Orisha faith. And the reason why I wouldn't write off religious bodies completely is because sometimes they do come through with religious analysis that is helpful or supportive. And I'll give a specific example. So when, the Zika debate was happening, the Institute for Gender Development Studies had a forum around that, and specifically around abortion. And there was an imam present, and the general feeling or consensus in the room was that religious bodies are against abortion. And the imam stood up and said, well, actually, in Islam, it is permissible for a woman to terminate pregnancy within the first, I don't know, however many days that he said. And I think that these interventions are important for us to take note of, which is that all religious bodies or all religious leaders do not have the same analysis of women's autonomy, about SRH, etc. And for people who want to do that work, I mean, I am not that one, but for people who are invested in religion and who want to do that work, I think it's important to try to find allies within religious institutions and really take advantage of those allyships based on their specific doctrine that can be supportive to the movement.
Thank you so much for sharing that intervention, Stephanie, and bringing that into the space. And as we're mindful of the kind of expansive ways people practice religion and faith practices, but also the different kinds of advocacy and that can unfold with the various kinds of configurations we see in different ways of religion being practiced beyond the traditional ways that we have heard being discussed in this conversation, right? And then the different kinds of violences that are enabled, as well as the lack of accountability mechanisms that are even introduced following those violences that are instituted and institutionalized and wielded in very powerful and harmful ways. I want to give space to Laura Angeles because we're almost reaching our time before wrapping up our session. Laura Angeles, do you want to bring anything into the space or comment on this question about religion before we wrap up panel one?
Well, I think that I agree with everything that you have said. One of the things that I may want to add is how religion also prohibiting these issues as HIV prevention, condoms, and women's empowerment also put women at risk of getting infected with HIV. Um, Also thinking about how many issues, how many rape issues the church, at least I think globally, had. However, we are not still able to fight against that. Um, I think that one of the key issues that religion is doing right now is disconnecting people from their own bodies, um, shaming, telling what you can do, what you cannot do, and it's very worried that they have a lot of power, and not only power, but they have their base organized. So every time you see any law project, you can see them doing lobby around that issue. Right now, in these past elections, we had a whole new party that was called Proyecto Dignidad, and it was like a religious party. And I think a couple of people from that party were able to be elected. So now we have more conservative, religious conservative, um, legislating for laws and on sexuality. Um, so I think that we need to be able to see how we can deal with this, because I know that religious community that is opposing to many of the laws that can provide and get against gender violence and identity, um, is being promoted by religious people, mostly. Um, so I think that it's very important that we as women, as queer community, Black community in the Caribbean, are able to share this experience around how we can avoid having people that make conservative decisions around our bodies in our government.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. We are at time, a minute over it, but this conversation is so juicy and so nourishing, but also so informative and insightful in so many ways. So I definitely did not want to cut it off. But for the sake of moving this forward and ending panel one, I just want to say thank you so much for highlighting these violent silences and the actual violence of laws, of policies, and of these actions themselves, but also thanks for highlighting the shared experiences and sort of faith practices and activist legacies that can really move this forward in a productive way. Thank you for shedding light on, the harms as well as the possibilities across the globe and in this region. We need to pay more attention to how our understanding of ourselves shape the way we understand the world simultaneously, but also the possibilities that we can really rely on and develop in community to move this forward. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Your expertise is valued and we are grateful to be in conversation with you all. Please give a round of applause for our renowned panelists. Unmute yourselves.
Thanks so much, everyone. It was
That was fire.
That was.
Thank you so much.
And I wish we had more time.
More time.
I know the time sucks. And I really hope that you carry these conversations into the solidarity sessions that we're going to have, because that's also going to be more of an open space. So we can go a little bit longer in your commentary in those spaces. So I recognize that with the time. And let me just say this too, in doing it by regions, it's been intentional that we get that focus, but we also, when you're dealing with regions, you want so much representation. It's like, how do I get these people in and how do we get these voices
Yes.
heard? So I am so grateful and so appreciative, because even with the small amount of time that you have, you all just, there were so many gems and there were so many, you know, fire bursts. I'm over here all giddy, because this is exactly what we need, is to draw these issues of commonality, but also these issues of intersectionality and diversity based not only on the region, but on where you're living and the lived experiences that you're working with. And I couldn't be more grateful for what I've just learned just in this past hour. So
Absolutely.
thank you
Same.
so very much.
Very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Laura Angelis, Yolanda, Chanel, Ifasina, and Stephanie. Thank you so much for dropping these gems and your wisdom and for sharing this. And I do hope to meet you all in person one day.
And thank you, Julissa, for being
South Africa, maybe December. We can think about that, right?
Yes, yes. Botswana in December.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
With that said, yes, thank you all so much. I also learned so much as well. So now we are going to transition into a 5-minute break. And during this break, we'll be hosting a performance from Ruth Osman. And this will be played for you all to enjoy. Ruth Osman is a Guyanese singer, songwriter, and flutist based in Trinidad and Tobago. She's a poet disguised as a songbird, according to the Caribbean Beat magazine. Take a moment to breathe. Enjoy our featured artist, Ruth Osman.
Greetings, WomenNOW and sisters in the Caribbean. I am Ruth Osman, and I am proud to be a Black feminist. I believe that Black feminism is important because women, in our case Black women, have to continually contend with systems and ideologies and practices that seek to keep us in a box, keep us in our places. And so we need to build community and develop ideologies and systems that support our struggle. I am going to be doing a jazz standard called Afro Blue, written by Mongo Santa Maria. I added an original poem to it. I hope you enjoy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. La, 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 la. I dream of a land my soul is from. I see a hand, a stroke of the drum. Shades of delight, you, rich as the night, Afro blue. in contrast, vibrating the spectrum of duality, warping the line, bending the mind, spiraling from the center out to infinity. Nothing can define me. Not my sway, sachet, my ebb and flow, my give and take, the sound I make when he touches me right there. Not my hold your belly laugh, my sharp shooter tone, the sting and shock of it, the way it cuts you down in defense of what is mine, what is ours. I am one, I am many, I am night, I am light. My mouth carries water, my hand throws flame. I am the dream of those who came before me. I dream of land. I dream of land. I dream of land. I dream of land. Do you dream of land? Do you dream of land? Do you dream of land? Do you dream of
Oh, woo! I'm now going to welcome our second moderator, Timnit Gadar, to this space. Hello, Timnit.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome back for panel 2. I'll be moderating. My name is Timnit Gadar, and I'm a historian of Africa. I research and act on the histories and legacies of decolonization in Eritrea and Ethiopia. And I'm happy to be here with you guys today. So panel 2 will speak to the topic of solidarity and movement building. The panelists will speak to the topic and the guiding questions provided using their experiences within the Caribbean. The focus for round 1 is listed on the screen, but our panelists are not limited to these topics alone. So first, I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves, including their name and pronouns, current occupation or organization that you are representing, and where in the Caribbean you are from. So the order is on the slide and in the chat, and we can go ahead and begin then with Rosita.
Yes, my name is Rosita Romero. I am the Executive Director of the Dominican Women's Development Center. And the work that we do is mostly in New York City. So I will be talking mostly about the experience that we face as immigrant from the Caribbean country of mostly the Dominican Republic, but of well, I don't know if I still have more.
Now.
I'm sorry?
Now.
I can continue to speak. I have more time. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So when it comes to Latina women in New York City, we have historic, ethnic, and class differences between Latina women and white women, as some earlier feminists put it. When white women were burning brass in the 60s, Latina women were trying to earn the money.
Hi, Rosita.
Yes.
Sorry, we're just going to do introductions for now, and then you can continue with that once we introduce the other panelists.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I stopped talking. But
I think there was.
My apologies. I thought it had gone on mute, so I was like, I can still hear you. So I'm sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Onika, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. My name is Onika Henry, she, her pronouns. I am an educational and clinical sexologist. So that means I do sex education as well as coaching and counseling around sexual issues. I'm in private practice, so I work for myself. I am from the island of Tobago, part of the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Check.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Neal. I'm from Jamaica. I am the Policy and Research Officer at Women's Empowerment for Change, which is a queer women's-led organization here in Jamaica. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if folks can see me. Oh. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelique Nixon, and I'm from the Bahamas, born and raised, and my pronouns are she and her. I currently live in Trinidad and Tobago. I teach and do research at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, University of the West Indies. And I'm also a director of CAISO Sex and Gender Justice, which is a feminist civil society organization, and we focus on ensuring wholeness, justice, and inclusion for LGBTI plus communities.
Hello. Hello, I am Lucia Ellis. Hi, good afternoon. I am Lucia Ellis. I am from Belize. I have a company, the Massa Wellness Resource Center, which focuses on advocacy and research on tangible, intangible cultural heritage. I will be speaking about the research that I have done on those traditional ways that women take care of themselves, which we need to retrieve so that we can avoid the invasive treatments that the health sector imposes upon us, especially when it comes to our reproductive health issues.
Great, thank you for those introductions. As we move into our topic on solidarity and movement building, Black women are notorious for leading and generating social change. It's time for our struggles and oppression to be brought to the forefront, especially when it comes to addressing the issues that affect us most. So I want us to take a moment to speak about how we ought to move forward in creating global movements for change. To start, we're going to ask you all to speak to how Black women should build intergenerational solidarity to dismantle neocolonialism, Western imperialism, and patriarchy across movements. So Rosita, I'll start with you when I ask the following questions. What are the challenges and solutions for Black women that you represent and advocate for related to these topics? And you can see the topics there on the screen. What's unique to the intersections that you address? And what's the common ground for the regional challenges?
Yes, like I started saying, in terms of the challenges that we face as Latina women in New York City, there have been historic ethnic and class differences between Latina women and white women. As some earlier feminists put it, when white women were burning their bras in their 60s, the Latina women were trying to earn money to buy the bras. From the beginning, we have been facing stereotypes about Latina women as being hot or oversexed, which are efforts to control and distort our sexual expressions. the perception that Latina women have too many children, which is, as we know, an effort to exercise population control and control over our body. And those are related to the fears of the growth of certain populations, because there is power in numbers, and all sort of political, economic, social power. In the United States, for instance, since 2010, the census of Latinos show that there are more Latinos than African American in the U.S., and we became the first minority group in relation to the white population. As we know, in certain parts of the country, Latinos are a majority, not a minority, but across the country, we do constitute the second largest minority group. Also, it's important to talk about the fact that as women, as Latina women of African heritage, and Latina women of colors also face a different reality from Latina women who might be white or from upper classes. And that is something that it has always been a challenge for us. Historically, there have been attempts to control the Latino population in our countries, like is the case of La Operación in Puerto Rico, bringing more to the Caribbean, which was a government-led effort to sterilize Puerto Rican women on the island in the 40s and 50s, and it's particularly to poor women that gave birth in public hospitals without their consent. Last year, right now in the United States, there have been experiences of 4 or 5 women who gave birth in detention centers in the U.S. border Mexico, and they were sterilized without their consent. There are a lot of intersectionalities related to reproductive justice and other issues that our community is facing. They have to do with immigration. In this area, the main problem is the large number of women who are undocumented and cannot access health services, whether they are reproductive services or any other kind of services, and also government benefits to be able to sustain themselves and their families. We are also facing a lot of loss of jobs and stream vending opportunities because of COVID-19. Of course, there are higher levels of poverty among Latina women. For every dollar that a white man makes, a white woman makes 70, now is 83 cents, whereas a black woman makes 64 cents, but a Latina woman still only makes 54 cents. We also have a lot of housing overcrowding in our communities. Many of sometimes the family have to live in a small room because of gentrification, and they cannot pay for a full apartment. This creates limitations in terms of couples' ability to practice sexual privacy, stressors of having too many people living in small confinements.
Thank you, Rosita.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to get into more of that, but we're going to move on for the sake of time to Onika to comment on these initial topics.
Okay, thank you. So in my sexology work, I focus a lot on helping people recognize and unlearn toxic, harmful, and unhealthy beliefs and practices that prevent them from having healthy sexuality. And when I say healthy sexuality, I'm referring to the ability to enjoy and control their sexual and reproductive lives. And so in my work, I show the link between this sex negativity and the legacy of colonialism and enslavement, which is still very deeply rooted and supported by our social, our health, our religious, our educational, and political systems. And in my view, this is a Caribbean-wide problem. The thing is that while I offer, as a clinical sexologist, while I offer trauma support and unwinding, especially through a lot of body-based work, so I work with somatics, And while I teach pleasure and eroticism as a way of healing from and counteracting racism, oppression, and marginalization, it is also painfully obvious to me that as I help people heal, these people are not returning to a safe society. So a battered and assaulted woman who I may help on her healing journey returns to the same patriarchal and toxic masculine space. My students who I'm teaching, they're returning to homes or neighborhoods that are ravaged with poverty and violence. And so along with my work that is healing and clinical, I also prepare people to be resilient, and I prepare them for resistance. In other words, I'm preparing them to challenge the status quo, take calculated risks, and find other souls, other people who think like themselves for support and community so that they can continue to fight and struggle together. In my mind, it is critical that I find ways to support what we call in our field, communal joy practices. Because we heal better, we heal faster, and we are more resilient in community settings. Bodies are attuned and in sync and more empathetic in communal joy practices spaces. So in my opinion, in my work, I bring together our folk and our carnival traditions because those are obvious and accessible healing and joy practices. Those are my preferred tools for transformation, healing, and education. And it may not be unique, but perhaps what is rare is that I bring together sexology, theater artists, and social justice and activism work. And that said, in the Caribbean community, or mass or carnival and folklore traditions, I think are common tools that we have and are easily accessible for all. And so for me, my real impact from my work can't be separated from social issues. And so I'm training for better survival and an ability to experience joy in the midst of great danger.
Hi. So I was thinking a lot about the work that We Change does. So while we have here at We Change a core of elderly women who we have connected with, who help to guide the sort of work that we do, especially in terms of reproductive justice, because we would have engaged in that work before, it's still a little difficult in terms of connecting and creating this larger overarching movement of solidarity, especially for women and specifically for queer women, because the fact is that there are women here in Jamaica, and Bell Hooks would have said that patriarchy has no gender. There are women here in Jamaica who are beholden to patriarchy and beholden to maintaining the trappings of neocolonialism. So while there might be an understanding of the historical impact of imperialism on our country and in terms of giving us these structures that are imperative to our own oppression, they have not moved that lens of analysis into neocolonialism and what happens now, how countries like the United States, for example, and still Britain, how their foreign policies, the sort of influence that they have on the world, how that impacts us as a global South country and as a country in the Caribbean. So that makes it extremely difficult to really build some sort of solidarity to make the necessary progress that we need. Because, for example, one of the reasons that We Change came about was because there was no place for us as queer women in the women's movement in 2015 when we arrived. The look of the women's movement in Jamaica was middle class, it was cisgendered, it was heterosexual, and a lot of the women in those groups were also Christian leaning, and so it inevitably created a barrier for non-cisgendered, non-heterosexual women to enter into those spaces and find any sort of commonalities.
Thank you. Lucia?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. And I want to thank my ancestors and the elders for blessing me with this opportunity. The advocacy of the Massa Wellness Resource Center has led to the inclusion of alternative medicine in the Belize National Culture Policy, which was launched in March of 2014. Alternative medicine and other, as a traditional cultural practice, is now recognized as crucial to achieving optimum health and wellness in our communities. The movement that I spearhead is called Warani Wabagari Walagante, our medicine, our life, our legacy. And I'm prepared to share with you some remedies that I have been able to research. And because there is a wealth of information about prevention and cures that are non-invasive, one of the issues is that the health system is imposing lots of invasive remedies when we have traditional practices that are non-invasive. So I have here hibiscus flower, which is for a menstruation suppressant, and it's used for toning the womb. Then there are other flowers. Marigold is also important, useful. You probably recognize this. And this one is a relaxant, okay? And along with cinnamon, jackass bitters, all of these herbs that are everyday are non-invasive and would address some of the ailments, the reproductive health ailments that we have. Then there are also therapies such as vaginal steaming and sitz baths, which our elders used to use. The issue for me is that we are not having enough conversation with younger women, the institution and mechanisms which are not in place to transmit this knowledge to the younger women. So we need to create space, and I've done that as much as possible, to create a space for this conversation with younger women so that they don't need to go to modern medicine unless it is really necessary. The whole system of apprenticeship and gathering of younger women at the feet of elders is competing with modernization, acculturation, and Western biomedicine. The World Health Organization Social Determinants of Health has created a space for indigenous social determinants of health. We need to become knowledgeable about these mechanisms and start to put pressure on our governments so as to make the changes that we need.
Thank you so much for that, Angelique.
Hi, thank you so much. Give thanks so much for that. So beautiful. Thank you all for this conversation. Give thanks to the ancestors and give thanks to all who came before and are still with us today. So I just want to share a little bit about my work through the questions that you've asked. You know, I define and think of and work always as intersectional. We have to. My own focus being Black, queer, decolonial, and feminist in my praxis. My work as a writer and an activist and a researcher really is about how do we create spaces for resistance and desire? How do we dare to imagine a world where people of color, especially Black women and queer people, can be human and free? And so I see working for gender and sexual justice, and this includes reproductive justice for women and LGBTQI plus people, as being vital in the ongoing project of decolonial struggle for the Caribbean region and across the African diaspora. And so in my work, I really think about, and this is what I also do through CAISO, Sex and Gender Justice, and I'll talk about that a little more in a few minutes, but that working towards creating awareness and understanding of diverse genders and sexualities across our region is so important in my work as a scholar and a writer and a creative person and as an activist. Making sure that our folks know that we've been here a long time. We're not some foreign thing, and that is so important. And working at the intersections, we have to think about this through racial, economic, class, and climate justice for the Caribbean. And everything is connected. So as Audre Lorde says, we don't live single issue lives, right? So our struggles are not single issue. And so building intergenerational solidarity to dismantle all forms of oppression, including neocolonialism, new forms of imperialism, as well as white supremacy, all of these things have to be, and in my work I argue they have to be done together. And so I want to talk a little bit about CAISO. With CAISO Sex and Gender Justice, we work really to think about this idea of wholeness and justice and inclusion. And we've done that in a number of ways. And so, we've done it through demanding state action against gender-based violence, because we see how that affects so many of our communities. And we've done lots of coalition building, from everything from ending child marriage in Trinidad and Tobago to working for a legislation that would protect LGBT folks along with other communities against discrimination. And, I just want to highlight again that, when we think about the common ground for regional challenges, as I close, we have shared histories, we have shared trauma, we have ruptures, we have so many silences. And in our differences is where I think we have the common ground to face the most unique and the most pressing problems of our time, being from dependency capitalism and colonialism to racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and the climate crisis. Economic precarity, all of it. And in the context of the pandemic, we are dealing with all of these and more. And so yeah, that's my response to what we need in terms of solidarity. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Angelique, and to all the panelists. So now we're going to have an opportunity for you all to, speak in conversation with one another. Now that we have more information regarding the Caribbean context outside of the sexual and reproductive health rights and justice space, I want us to address one of the most important issues that contributes to our oppression, patriarchy. History shows us that Black women take the lead in building truly intersectional human rights movements, and oftentimes the movements that began with centering our voices evolve into leaving us behind once the movement gains momentum and popularity. So moving forward with this second panel, we're now going to ask you to speak in conversation with one another regarding what feminism looks like in the Caribbean for Black women. So my question for all of you is, how does feminism exist in the Caribbean? Is feminism in the Caribbean a divider or uniter within women's movement? And the floor is open for anyone to begin.
Who's starting us off? Oh, go ahead.
I can start. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Good. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the other issues that I couldn't cover because of lack of time, and one has to do with the issue of immigration, which we see some of being by women when they're trying to cross the border, where there are larger possibilities of them being raped or sexually harassed by the coyotes or the men in the trip themselves from the immigration officers. And there is so much human sex trafficking of women that are brought thinking that they're going to be working in restaurants or homes and in the entertainment industry, and then end up being forced to work as prostitutes until they can pay the cost of the trip. But in the area of immigration, we have the Dreamers Act, which is the one that allows people that came as children and undocumented to the United States to go to college and get financial aid. This is something that was passed during the Obama administration. It was reversed during the Trump administration, and now it's back with the Biden administration. But this Dreamers movement provides an opportunity for us to build intergenerational opportunities. In terms of how we fight patriarchy and build more movement with Caribbean women, our organization has been participating in the encounters of feminist women from Latin America and the Caribbean, which gathers thousands of women from Latin America and the Caribbean to conduct discussions on how colonialism, imperialism, and patriarchy affects women from the perspective of our own different countries. Many women who participate in these gatherings, including myself, I define myself as a feminist, but many of the women in the encounters, they define themselves as autonomous, which are more radical tendencies within the feminist movement. Some define themselves as womanist or just part of the women's movement, as opposed to the feminist movement in an effort to differentiate themselves from the white feminist movement, particularly in the US and also in the Caribbean. One of the challenges that we face when we try to build a coalition and work with the Caribbean communities and the different feminisms, one of the challenges is the language, and this is something that we experience where in the feminist encounters, where we had the representation from the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, the French-speaking Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean, and also the Creoles, like in Haiti, in Aruba, and it just became very challenging. But I definitely believe that feminism is something that should be a uniter, has the potential to be a uniter among the different women's movements.
Thank you so much, Rosita. We want to give a chance for other people to comment as well. You brought up some important challenges, in the movement for feminism, especially with people identifying with other, categories or labels, we might say, like womenism and other things. So anyone else on the panel would like to jump in?
Hi, I want to jump in and just say, I think it's important to remember that there's Caribbean feminisms, right? So there's very much been a long history of feminist thought being produced and written from research, and certainly Caribbean women's movements have long been complex, multi-ethnic, cross-cultural, cross-generational, multilingual, and very dynamic. And so I just wanted to say that I think what we think of as Western feminism or even mainstream feminism has so much to learn from Caribbean feminisms and movement building in terms of complexity, diversity, the challenges. I mean, Rosita was talking about the challenges of the multilingual space, but that is our region. And we've also seen the ways that Caribbean women's movements have risen to the challenge of organizing across difference. And I think that's one of the lessons that we learn again and again, and their challenges, but just rising to that. So Caribbean women's movements and organizing have long been intersectional. And I think that's what's really important to know about Caribbean feminisms and multi-ethnic and complex. Nonetheless, I think there are tensions around the word feminism, especially when it comes to mean something that is coming from the global north as opposed to our own homegrown rooted feminisms, which I think many of us on this call have done the work of making sure it is represented well and that we know it, and spreading that through popular consciousness and education.
I just wanted to first agree with Angelique about Caribbean feminisms, and that there definitely has been a long history of Caribbean writers and theorists who have been theorizing about what it truly means to be a Caribbean woman, what it means to be a Black saying Black because of my context, what it means to be a Black woman living in the global South in a country that was formerly colonized and a country that is heavily dependent on the global North for sustenance. In terms of answering the question of how does feminism exist in the Caribbean, I can speak to the Jamaican context in that though we've had a long history of feminist activists discussing and doing work around changing policies in terms of social and economic rights and the resources and abilities and access of Jamaican women. Currently, it's difficult to name, or it's difficult to pinpoint a feminist movement in particular here in Jamaica. Or understanding of feminism, I believe, has been distorted. And Angelique would have mentioned that the ideas from the global North about what feminism looks like, especially now that feminism has become a mainstream capitalist venture, a t-shirt venture. Because it's become that, we've sort of adopted it here in Jamaica, and we see it. So we see it in terms of a lot of women thinking that feminism means we need to see more women in the boardrooms, or we need to talk about being a girl boss. And everybody's familiar with the term girl boss, you know, a woman who can do both housework and economic labor without doing any sort of interrogation of how women have continuously been have continuously taken on the burden of care in the household, as well as earn economically, right? So within our space here in Jamaica, there's still this, I don't want to say lack of understanding, but an unintentional interrogation, or we have not yet interrogated or have not really critiqued this idea of the position of women here in Jamaica. And I can go even further in terms of sexual violence. Jamaica has one of the highest rates of femicide in the world, and we also have an extremely high, and I'll add a trigger warning here, we have an extremely high reporting of rapes here in Jamaica, and even that is underreported. And whenever issues of rape and domestic violence come about in the public sphere, the reaction tends towards victim blaming and victim shaming, as opposed to turning the lens on not just the abusers, but on the culture that we've established that allowed and fostered the violation and violence towards women and girls, as well as queer people and especially trans people. So while feminism can be both a uniter, as Rosita said, at the current stage, it is a divider. And I think it's because here in let me not say the Caribbean, but in Jamaica, we have not defined, or we have not sought to understand what feminism looks like here for us, or we have not seen the ways in which feminism, particularly Black and Caribbean feminism, has allowed us as women here in Jamaica and as queer people here in Jamaica to really navigate the space.
Thank you for that, Christina. We will be wrapping up soon, so I'd love to invite Lucia or Anika if you'd like to add anything.
I would like to say that I have struggled with the definition of feminism, and I have come to the conclusion that we need to, as I agree with what everyone else said, so we need to understand the dynamics of our oppression, and so that, and as we understand that, we will be able to identify the racism that occurs across cultures because of the diversity in our region. Defining feminism would need to be within the context of each of our settings. As an Indigenous woman, the need to understand that feminism, what feminism is not, I have come up with, that it is not that we are against men as what is perpetrated. It is not that we hate other people, or that we are going to be about our sexuality. It is about our survival as a people, so that as women within the context of our community, so that we can perpetuate our communities. Because if feminism is going to contribute to the destruction as it is understood in certain settings, then that is what creates the divide and the confusion in our societies.
Okay, so I will quickly jump in and perhaps share a controversial opinion or view. I have never really felt drawn to feminism as it was presented to me, or rather as I perceived it to be. And so for me, womanism has always felt like a whole heap of yes. And so the definition that I learned of womanism, as in committed to the wholeness and survival of the entire peoples, both men and women, that felt whole and complete to me. As I understand womanism as compared to feminism, I love Alice Walker's phrase, womanist is to feminist as purple is to lavender. And so for me, feminism is kind of like a subset of womanism. And from the get-go, the definition of womanism for me already had built into it, levels of oppression. So there is, a womanist is dealing with sexism, racism, and classism. And so it's already intersectional. And so it's already multi-layered. And so while I will not throw out feminism, I think feminism is a subset that came out of or was needed for a particular society, i.e. the Western space. And for me, particularly as a mother of sons, particularly as a woman who is a survivor of sexual violence and sexual assault, who now has to raise men, finding a way to understand my worth and importance as a woman while raising men to treat and see women differently is what propelled me towards a womanist perspective and that view as opposed to feminist. I think there was just a whole lot of undoing and dealing with a whole lot of backlash with feminism as opposed to womanism, which embraces the importance of having everybody while still focusing and nurturing and healing women and allowing women to need to be separate at some times, especially if it's for our own healing and for our own well-being. So that's my view. It's a little bit different, but I am way much more comfortable with womanism because it seems to have that ancestral understanding of a need to deal with everyone's survival, both men and women, while still focusing on women's needs.
I don't know if I'm able to add something to it. Just
unfortunately, I'm so sorry, Christina. We do have to wrap up, but I know that this is a huge topic, and we'd love to hear so much more from all of you. I noticed you responded a bit in the chat, so feel free to continue to do that way, Christina, if you'd like. But thank you all so much for being a voice for Black and Brown women and girls and continuing the fight against the issues that continue to harm us most. It's important for us to speak from our experiences within the Caribbean, but exemplify through our actions that we are all in solidarity with Black women across the globe. We may have differing experiences, but the struggle against neocolonialism, Western imperialism, and patriarchy is global. So at this time, you can unmute yourselves and please give a warm Woman Now thank you to all of our wonderful panelists.
Wonderful. Well done.
I am now going to
I don't think we could have dreamed up two better conversations, quite frankly. I'm sorry, Araya, you were getting ready to say something, but I just had to say that because this is just, y'all know I get all in my feels when we really go deep and we really vibe on each other and we show our commonality and our diversity. And it's just so exciting. Y'all are on it. I'm just on fire over here. I don't have goosebumps. I have spirit bumps.
Yes. No, thank you, Dazon. I'm going to actually hand the baton over to Robin so we can begin closing out on our NGO platform.
Yes. Yes, thank you all to our panelists, all of you. It's been such an amazing learning experience for me, and I'm sure it has been a really great learning experience for everyone tuning in today. So as we start to close out this amazing conversation. And that doesn't mean that the conversation will end. I would like to let you all know that we are hosting solidarity sessions first and foremost. And these will allow us to actively engage the challenges that our panelists have addressed today surrounding gender and reproductive justice, and also the need for solidarity building across region to region. So we will also be posing solutions. We'll be having an amazing time. I am posting a link in the NGOCSW chat for those who are tuning in on that platform to join us. That is the Zoom link. We would love to have you all. We also encourage our panelists to join us as well. We encourage our friends on Facebook to join us as well to continue this conversation. So I hope to see y'all. I love it. I'm gonna be facilitating a breakout, so I would love to keep talking to y'all. Okay, so I am now going to introduce our public service announcement because as we bring this meeting to a close, we wanted to give you all a 2-minute long video that summarizes your next steps for joining our movement, specifically at our global summit that is happening at the end of the year. And then as time goes on, our WomenNOW Institute as well. So without further ado, here is our public service announcement.
WomenNOW's core organizing team would first like to thank our distinguished panelists and moderators for making this regional convening possible. We're also very grateful for the live viewers and participants who joined us today. We invite you all to widen the scope of your understanding of the sexual and reproductive issues that disproportionately affect Black women in your region. WomenNOW is dedicated to achieving transnational sexual and reproductive justice for all women and girls of African descent. So, we encourage you all to advocate for our sisters of the diaspora. You can start by staying within the loop with your newfound family here at WomenNOW. And don't forget to tell your friends, family, and fellow Black feminists and allies about us to help strengthen our movement. You can first head to womennow.world and join our newsletter. You can then look out for a post-event survey and a place to submit your testimonials, which will be sent via email. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud at WomenNOW World to stay connected. If you have any questions, you can contact us via our contact page or by emailing womennow@sisterlove.org. Join us for all our other virtual convenings from now until October and the summit taking place December 3rd through 5th in 2021 in Durban, South Africa. Donate or sponsor WomenNOW 2021 to further our efforts. Prospective donors can click the donate button on our homepage at womennow.world. And prospective sponsors can use our contact form to inquire about becoming a sponsor. With love, from the organization team of WomenNOW Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum.
That was awesome, Robin.
Oh, thank you. Did y'all recognize my voice? No. Yeah, I'm so glad that I was able to make that for you all. So we are now going to start offering our gratitude, many thanks to all of the people who made this regional convening possible. So on behalf of the organizing team at WomenNOW Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum, we would first like to thank our panelists for sharing their stories and informing us about the issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health rights and justice for Black and Brown women and girls in the Caribbean. Here are the running list. Thank you all. I'm applauding for you all as well. And please do attend our solidarity session if you are available. We would also like to thank Sister Love Inc., UNFPA, the Pan-African Positive Women's Coalition, the Global Fund for Women, and the captioning, activism, and community service that provided our captioning for our first convening. We would also like to thank NGOCSW for hosting this convening. Thank you all for putting countless hours into organizing and using or offering all of your hard work for making this regional convening possible, especially for our team and also the people who we were not able to mention.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to extend Robin's gratitude. I'm going to say thank you to our moderators, Jaleesa Jolly and Timnit Gadar, for guiding us in conversation and helping us organize behind the scenes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our visionaries for Women Now, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Continuum, Dazon Dixon Diallo, and Loretta Ross. Lastly, thank you to our hundreds of participants across the globe who have taken some time to learn about our mission and stories for our liberation as a collective of Black feminists. We hope to see you all at our West and Central Africa regional convening taking place on April 16th, 2021. Thank you.
And I know Loretta would not want me to step off this particular call. We have less than a minute, and I'm going to do this in less than a minute. But I also want to make sure that we recognize and that we acknowledge as we go to our breakouts or our solidarity sessions, that this event, these processes, all that you have heard, the generation of the content, as well as all of the hard work to organize our panelists and our moderators and the rest of us, are this incredible, amazingly brilliant team that I think you all should understand that we are all being organized into these continuum by 2 college juniors. So we're talking about a true intergenerational experience where the leadership of Araya and Robin are so powerful, or is so powerful and is so worthy of us following them. And I also wanted to say thanks to Bryson and Katie and so many other folks who are doing so much of the technical behind the scenes work. And of course, we want to give thanks to our partners with the Commission on the Status of Women, the NGOCSW 65. This was truly an experience that we're grateful that we could have, because there's no way we would have been able to afford to get all of you into New York if this was in person. And I am so excited for the future. We'll see you in the solidarity sessions, and we'll see you in the West Africa and Central Africa regional continuum next month. Thank you.
Goodbye from Canada.
Bye-bye, bye-bye. I'll see y'all in the solidarity session, heading over now.
Oh, yes.
Y'all soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
from
Fred.
Africa, please.
Thank you, Lucia.